There comes a moment in every human life when effort seems to lose its power. You work harder, yet nothing changes. You pray for an answer, yet the silence remains. You change your plans, your surroundings, even the people around you. And still, somehow you find yourself standing before the same invisible wall. You begin to wonder whether life is against you. But beneath all these explanations lies an older question: why some lives flourish while others seem trapped in endless struggle? Are there laws beneath the visible world? Because there are consequences to what you repeatedly think, consequences to what you tolerate, consequences to what you fear, consequences to what you refuse to confront, and perhaps most importantly, consequences to the causes you continuously set into motion. This is where the ancient idea of divine laws begins, and understanding them changes everything. A person who understands the nature of fire stops arguing with it. A sailor who understands the wind stops demanding that the ocean obey his wishes. Yet human beings routinely do the opposite with life. We demand immediate results from processes that require time. We chase outcomes while ignoring causes. We ask for abundance while remaining governed by scarcity. We desire freedom while protecting the habits that imprison us. We want peace while feeding the thoughts that disturb us. We ask for a different life while repeatedly becoming the person who produces the old one. And then we ask, why isn't anything changing? Perhaps the better question is, what law am I living under? That question is the doorway to this book. Because the greatest mystery is not why life sometimes refuses to give us what we want. The greater mystery is why we continue repeating the same causes while expecting different effects. Humanity has become extraordinarily powerful at changing the world outside itself. We can cross oceans in hours. We can speak across continents instantly. Yet despite all this external power, the ancient struggles remain remarkably familiar: fear, greed, loneliness, envy, desire, grief, meaninglessness, the hunger to be seen, the fear of being forgotten, the endless pursuit of something that we believe will finally make us whole. We have conquered distance without conquering distraction. We have accumulated information without necessarily gaining wisdom. We have learned how to communicate with millions while struggling to understand ourselves. And perhaps this is humanity's great paradox. We have become masters of the external world while remaining strangers to the internal one. The divine laws begin at that boundary. They ask you to look beneath the surface of your circumstances, not to blame yourself for everything that happens, not to pretend that suffering is always your fault, not to believe that positive thoughts magically control every event, and certainly not to abandon reason in pursuit of comforting fantasies. Instead, this book asks you to examine something more difficult. What is within your power to change? What patterns are you reinforcing? What beliefs are silently directing your decisions? What desires are actually borrowed from other people? What wounds are disguising themselves as ambition? What fears have been masquerading as wisdom? What are you repeatedly sowing? What are you refusing to release? And what kind of person would you have to become to carry the life you claim to desire? They teach you how to become less helpless before life, because there is a profound difference between controlling reality and learning how to participate intelligently in reality. Chapter 1. The Principle of Stewardship. Master what you already hold. The wisest civilizations measured a person's greatness by something far less visible: how faithfully they cared for what had already been entrusted to them. Ancient stewards understood a principle that remains quietly true today. Expansion without responsibility becomes a burden rather than a blessing. Before asking life for more, learn to honor what is already in your hands. In many ancient households, the steward occupied a position of profound trust. Though not the owner of the estate, he managed its fields, protected its resources, resolved disputes among workers, and ensured that every harvest served future generations rather than temporary appetites. His authority did not arise from possession, but from faithful care. Over time, greater responsibility naturally followed because he had demonstrated wisdom with smaller responsibilities. The elders summarized the lesson in a single sentence: what is managed wisely naturally becomes capable of growth. This principle extends far beyond property. Your time is an orchard. Your attention is an orchard. Your health, your finances, your relationships, your reputation, and your peace of mind are all living fields entrusted to your care. Every day you either cultivate them or quietly neglect them. There is rarely a neutral choice. Many people ask why greater opportunities seem delayed, while overlooking the opportunities already waiting for faithful attention. They hope for better relationships while neglecting simple conversations. They long for financial security while ignoring small daily spending habits. They desire vibrant health while postponing ordinary acts of care. They seek purpose while allowing their attention to scatter across countless distractions. The Stoic philosophers observed that character is revealed not in extraordinary moments, but in ordinary responsibilities fulfilled consistently. Marcus Aurelius reminded himself that every day presented another opportunity to practice integrity through the tasks immediately before him. He understood that wisdom grows through repeated choices, not dramatic declarations. Modern life often encourages the opposite mindset. We celebrate expansion while overlooking stewardship. Bigger houses, larger incomes, wider audiences, and greater influence appear attractive, yet each requires greater capacity to manage well. Without discipline, abundance easily becomes anxiety. Ancient teachers repeatedly warned that receiving more without becoming wiser rarely produces lasting fulfillment. Consider the quiet discipline of caring for a garden. No season rewards neglect simply because the gardener dreams of a larger harvest. Watering must continue. Weeds must be removed. Soil must remain healthy. Small daily acts accumulate into visible abundance. So it is with every meaningful aspect of life. Relationships thrive under careful stewardship. A brief conversation offered with full attention often strengthens a marriage more than expensive gifts purchased without presence. A handwritten note to a lifelong friend can preserve a bond that years of silence might slowly weaken. Love grows where attention is invested. Health follows similar laws. The body rarely transforms through occasional bursts of enthusiasm. Instead, it responds faithfully to repeated choices made over months and years. Gentle movement, nourishing food, restful sleep, and calm reflection seem modest when viewed individually. Together they become powerful expressions of stewardship. Even attention itself demands careful management. Ancient philosophers understood that whatever consistently receives our attention gradually shapes our character. A distracted mind cannot faithfully care for anything because it is always elsewhere. Stewardship begins by deciding what deserves the limited hours each day provides. There is quiet freedom in embracing this principle. It releases us from endless comparison and returns us to the responsibilities that genuinely belong to us. Rather than anxiously demanding more from life, we begin asking wiser questions. Have I honored what I already possess? Have I cultivated today's opportunities with integrity? Have I managed my inner life as carefully as I manage my outer ambitions? Capacity rarely arrives all at once. It expands through faithful practice. Every responsibility accepted with humility stretches the soul slightly further. Every promise kept strengthens trust. Every ordinary task completed with excellence prepares the mind for greater challenges. The universe often entrusts more to those who demonstrate they can care well for what is already present, not because of favoritism, but because growth follows readiness. Just as a strong foundation supports a larger home, disciplined stewardship creates the stability upon which greater opportunities can safely rest. The ancient steward understood a truth our hurried age often forgets. Abundance begins long before accumulation. It begins with reverence for the gifts already placed within reach. Before asking life for more, pause and look carefully at what already surrounds you. Your next opportunity may not require a new beginning. It may simply require becoming a wiser caretaker of what has been yours all along. Chapter 2: The 7 Daily Seeds of Extraordinary Lives. Long before clocks divided the day into hours and minutes, the wisest men and women divided life into habits. They understood something that modern civilization often forgets. Destiny is rarely decided by dramatic moments. It is quietly written by ordinary actions repeated until they become character. Ancient gardens were not admired because someone planted 1,000 seeds in a single afternoon. They flourished because someone returned every morning, watering what could not yet be seen. The invisible discipline created the visible harvest. In one ancient village, an elderly gardener was known not for his wealth or political influence, but for the extraordinary beauty of his orchard. Travelers crossed deserts simply to see trees that seemed healthier than any others. Curious apprentices asked him what secret fertilizer he used. The old man smiled and answered, "The trees do not grow because of what I give them once. They grow because I never forget them." His answer disappointed those hoping for hidden formulas. Yet the oldest wisdom often sounds ordinary because it describes reality itself. Nothing lasting appears suddenly. Even mountains are shaped grain by grain. Rivers carve valleys drop by drop. Human character follows the same law. The ancients believed every sunrise offered 7 invisible seeds. Whatever a person planted consistently would eventually become the landscape of their life. The first seed is gratitude. Gratitude is not pretending life is perfect. It is refusing to become blind to what already exists. Ancient philosophers noticed that 2 people could possess nearly identical lives while experiencing completely different realities. One saw only what was missing. The other noticed every blessing still present. The difference was not circumstance, but attention. A grateful person protects the mind from becoming consumed by endless dissatisfaction. Gratitude does not remove difficulty. It prevents difficulty from becoming the entire story. The second seed is attention. Where attention goes, energy quietly follows. Ancient teachers repeatedly warned that distracted minds eventually become fragmented lives. Every conversation ignored, every promise forgotten, every opportunity overlooked begins with scattered attention. Imagine sunlight passing through a window. It warms gently, but when concentrated through a magnifying lens, it can ignite fire. The human mind works the same way. Focus transforms ordinary effort into extraordinary influence. Small focus, great power. The third seed is discipline. Civilizations admired disciplined people because they could be trusted even when emotion changed. Motivation arrives and disappears like weather. Discipline continues walking after inspiration has gone home. A master potter once told his apprentice, "Clay remembers every careless hand. So does character. Every repeated choice shapes the person making it." Discipline is not punishment. It is loyalty to the future self. The fourth seed is integrity. Ancient builders often buried their names beneath temple foundations where no visitor would ever see them. Their greatest concern was not applause but strength. If the unseen stones were weak, the magnificent structure above would eventually collapse. Integrity is exactly that unseen foundation. Reputation depends upon witnesses. Integrity depends upon conscience. One may impress crowds for years, while quietly abandoning personal principles. Eventually, the hidden foundation reveals itself. Character always speaks louder than image. The fifth seed is service. Many ancient cultures taught that prosperity naturally follows usefulness. Rivers remain fresh because they continue flowing. Wells become stagnant when nothing enters or leaves them. Human beings often experience the same principle. Those obsessed only with receiving eventually feel empty. Those committed to contributing discover a deeper form of fulfillment. Service reminds us that our lives are woven into the lives of others. The question slowly changes. Instead of asking, "What can life give me?" we begin asking, "How can my presence leave this place better?" The sixth seed is patience. Few virtues have become more difficult in an age of immediate gratification. Ancient farmers understood seasons. No amount of anxiety could force wheat to mature overnight. Digging up newly planted seeds each morning to check their progress only guaranteed their destruction. Human growth follows similar rhythms. Healing requires seasons. Trust requires seasons. Wisdom requires seasons. Patience is not passive waiting. It is active faithfulness while time performs work invisible to the eye. Finally comes the seventh seed, reflection. Each evening, many philosophers quietly reviewed the day, not to condemn themselves, but to learn. They asked simple questions. Where did fear guide me? Where did wisdom guide me? What deserves repeating tomorrow? Reflection turns experience into understanding. Without reflection, years merely accumulate. With reflection, every ordinary day becomes a teacher. These 7 practices seem remarkably small: gratitude, attention, discipline, integrity, dafes, patience, refession. Yet forests begin as seeds almost invisible in the palm of a hand. Extraordinary lives usually begin the same way. The greatest transformations rarely announce themselves with thunder. They begin when one quiet decision is repeated long enough to become identity. The orchard becomes beautiful, one morning at a time. So does a human life. Ordinary habits create extraordinary futures. Perhaps tomorrow morning offers 7 seeds once again. The question is not whether life will hand them to you. The question is which ones you will choose to plant. Chapter 3. Ask, believe, receive. The ancient pattern of manifestation. Few ancient principles have been misunderstood more than these 3 simple words. Ask, believe, receive. Many people hear them and imagine reality behaving like a marketplace where wishes are exchanged for rewards. They expect the universe to respond to desire alone. When nothing changes, disappointment follows, and they conclude the principle itself was false. But the ancient teachers were rarely speaking about magic. They were describing transformation. Imagine a skilled architect standing before an empty piece of land. Long before the first stone is placed, a blueprint already exists. The building begins not with bricks but with clarity. Likewise, every meaningful creation begins with a clearly defined intention. This is the forgotten meaning of asking. To ask is first to become honest. Many people say they want peace while secretly feeding conflict. They claim to desire health while repeatedly choosing habits that weaken them. They long for meaningful relationships while refusing vulnerability. Their lives move in opposite directions because their intentions remain confused. Ancient philosophers believed that a vague mind creates a vague future. Clear intention organizes scattered energy. A single question, asked sincerely, can redirect an entire life. What kind of person am I becoming? That question alone has transformed countless lives. After asking comes believing. Belief is often mistaken for emotional excitement or blind optimism. The ancients understood something far more practical. Belief quietly changes behavior. Consider two craftsmen beginning identical apprenticeships. One believes mastery is possible through years of patient practice. The other secretly believes he lacks talent. Months later, their abilities begin to differ, not because fate favored one over the other, but because belief influenced persistence. The confident apprentice practices longer after mistakes. He seeks correction instead of avoiding it. He expects improvement. His belief quietly alters hundreds of daily decisions, invisible to everyone else. Meanwhile, doubt whispers a different story. Why continue? It will never matter. I'm probably not capable. The actions shrink, the opportunities disappear. Eventually, the result appears to confirm the original belief, even though behavior created much of the difference. Beliefs become silent architects. Then comes receiving. Receiving is not merely having something arrive unexpectedly. It is recognizing what was previously invisible. A traveler lost in the mountains may walk past the same path many times without noticing it. The path did not suddenly appear. Awareness changed. The same happens in ordinary life. New friendships, unexpected mentors, business opportunity, creative solutions, healing conversations. These often become visible only after intention and belief reshape perception. Prepared eyes notice possibilities that fearful eyes overlook. Yet one crucial element is still missing. The ancients quietly practiced it, though many modern interpretations forget it entirely. Preparation. Preparation is the bridge connecting belief to reality. Imagine asking for a harvest while refusing to prepare the soil. Imagine praying for wisdom while avoiding difficult conversations. Imagine hoping for meaningful work while never learning new skills. Desire without preparation creates frustration. Preparation without certainty creates possibility. An old craftsman once accepted an apprentice who asked, "Master, when will I be trusted with greater responsibility?" The craftsman handed him a broom. "For now," he replied, "master this." Months became years. The apprentice swept every corner with unusual care. He repaired broken tools without being asked. He arrived before sunrise and left after sunset. Eventually, visitors assumed he owned the workshop because he carried himself with such responsibility. One day, the aging craftsman placed the workshop keys into the apprentice's hands. "You have been preparing for this assignment long before you knew it existed." Nothing had been wasted. Preparation had quietly enlarged capacity. Life often works the same way. Many doors remain closed not because opportunity is absent, but because readiness is incomplete. Preparation transforms hope into capacity. Then, when opportunity finally appears, it feels like sudden success to observers. They see the harvest. They rarely see the years spent cultivating the soil. Ask, clarify your direction, believe. Allow conviction to shape daily choices. Prepare, become capable of carrying what you seek. Nefart, recognize, and faithfully act upon the opportunities now visible. The sequence is not supernatural. It is profoundly human. Every great civilization understood that inner clarity influences outward action, and outward action gradually reshapes circumstance. The greatest miracle is often quieter than we expect. A different decision, repeated faithfully, until one ordinary day you realize your life has become the answer to the question you once asked. Chapter 4. The Shadow Behind Manifestation. When spirituality becomes escapism, every truth can become another illusion when misunderstood. Even the search for freedom can become another prison. Even the desire for awakening can become another way of avoiding life. Few dangers are more subtle. A person who openly pursues wealth knows he is chasing something, but a person who convinces himself that he has already transcended ordinary responsibilities may never notice that he has simply built a more comfortable illusion. Throughout history, genuine teachers did not encourage people to escape reality. They prepared them to meet it with greater courage. Consider the old story of a young seeker who traveled across deserts to study under an aging sage. He expected secret symbols, mysterious rituals, and hidden words capable of changing destiny overnight. Instead, on his first morning, the teacher handed him a broom. The student waited for deeper instruction. None came. For weeks he swept floors, carried water, repaired broken walls, cooked meals, and welcomed strangers. Eventually, frustration overcame him. "I crossed kingdoms for wisdom," he protested. "Why do you give me servant's work?" The old teacher smiled gently. "You still believe wisdom exists somewhere outside the life you refuse to live." Those words stayed with the young seeker far longer than any mystical lecture could have. The greatest obstacle was never ignorance, it was avoidance. That lesson remains surprisingly relevant today. Many people become fascinated by manifestation, consciousness, or personal transformation because they genuinely long for a better life. There is nothing wrong with that longing. The problem begins when spiritual language becomes a substitute for practical responsibility. Someone visualizes prosperity but refuses to learn new skills. Someone repeats affirmations while avoiding difficult conversations. Someone waits endlessly for the right sign. Instead of making the next responsible decision, another blames every disappointment on negative energy rather than examining poor habits, impatience, or unrealistic expectations. Without realizing it, spirituality becomes another hiding place. Ancient philosophers consistently warned against this tendency. The Stoics insisted that character reveals itself through action. Hermetic traditions emphasized disciplined self-mastery. Taoist sages spoke of effortless action, not effortless living. Even the mystery schools required years of preparation before deeper teachings were entrusted to a student. None promised transformation without participation. Inner work was never meant to replace outer work. It was meant to strengthen it. Imagine two gardeners standing before identical fields. The first spends every morning imagining abundant harvests but never plants seeds, waters the soil, or removes weeds. The second also imagines a flourishing garden, but then quietly begins preparing the earth day after day. Months later, only one garden bears fruit. Was imagination useless? No, imagination provided direction. Action created possibility. Reality rewarded consistency. This distinction changes everything. Hope without effort becomes fantasy. Effort without vision becomes exhaustion. When vision and disciplined action cooperate, something remarkable begins to emerge. Modern psychology quietly echoes this ancient insight. Visualization can improve confidence, focus, and emotional readiness when paired with deliberate practice. But visualization alone cannot replace learning, repetition, or responsibility. Mental rehearsal prepares the athlete. It does not run the race for them. The same principle governs every meaningful transformation. A healthier body still requires healthier habits. A stronger relationship still requires honest communication. Financial stability still requires wise stewardship. Peace still requires disciplined attention. Life honors participation. That is why genuine spiritual growth often makes life appear more ordinary, not more magical. The awakened person still washes dishes, pays bills, apologizes after mistakes, keeps promises, exercises patience, and fulfills responsibilities. The difference is not the tasks themselves, but the consciousness brought to them. The ordinary becomes sacred. Simple actions become expressions of integrity. Every responsibility becomes another opportunity to cultivate character. This is where many seekers quietly become builders. Instead of asking life to rescue them, they begin cooperating with life's deeper rhythms. Instead of demanding certainty, they develop trust. Instead of escaping discomfort, they learn from it. Instead of waiting for miracles, they become the kind of person through whom remarkable things gradually become possible. That transformation rarely appears dramatic from the outside, yet it quietly reshapes everything. One decision, one conversation, one habit, one responsibility accepted instead of avoided. These small choices become invisible architects of an entirely different future. Ancient wisdom never asked us to abandon the world. It invited us to enter it more consciously, not with less responsibility, with greater responsibility, not with less effort, with wiser effort, because the universe does not merely respond to wishes, it responds, over time, to the character expressed through consistent choices. Awareness without action becomes another escape. Before seeking another technique, another philosophy, or another hidden law, ask yourself one simple question. What ordinary responsibility have I been disguising as a spiritual problem? The answer may become the doorway you have been searching for all along. Chapter 5. The Hidden Law of Self-Sabotage. Why you destroy what you beg for. Have you ever noticed how people sometimes receive exactly what they once desired, only to lose it through choices they barely understand? A promotion arrives, and confidence disappears. A loving relationship begins, yet old fears slowly poison trust. Financial opportunity appears, but reckless decisions quietly erase it. From the outside, it seems irrational. From the inside, it often feels inevitable. The ancients understood something modern psychology continues to explore. Human beings do not always resist what they dislike. Sometimes they resist what they secretly desire. There is an old tale about a prince raised in poverty after a kingdom collapsed. Years later, loyal advisors found him and revealed his true inheritance. They dressed him in royal garments, placed him upon the throne, and restored his authority. Yet every evening, after the palace grew quiet, the young king secretly slipped into the kitchens to eat scraps with the servants. Not because he preferred hunger, because abundance felt unfamiliar. His body lived in a palace. His identity remained in survival. The wise counselor noticed this strange habit and finally asked, "Who taught you that you belong among leftovers?" The question unsettled the king far more than any political challenge. For the first time, he realized he was not fighting enemies outside the kingdom. He was fighting memories within himself. Many lives unfold the same way. Someone says they want prosperity, yet fears the responsibility that accompanies greater resources. Someone longs for influence but dreads criticism. Someone dreams of freedom but secretly feels safer with familiar limitations. Someone desires deep love while fearing the vulnerability genuine intimacy requires. The conscious mind asks for change. The unconscious mind protects familiarity. This inner conflict creates invisible resistance. Modern psychology describes how deeply held beliefs shape perception and behavior. If a person unconsciously believes they are undeserving, incapable, or unsafe when successful, they may unknowingly make decisions that preserve that identity. The sabotage rarely feels intentional. It feels natural because it protects an old story. Ancient philosophers observed the same pattern without using modern terminology. They taught that character determines capacity. A vessel can receive only what it is prepared to hold. Imagine pouring a river into a cracked jar. The river is not the problem. The vessel requires strengthening. Likewise, greater opportunity often demands greater patience. Greater wealth demands wiser stewardship. Greater influence requires deeper humility. Greater freedom asks for greater discipline. The blessing itself is rarely what overwhelms people. It is the responsibility attached to it. This explains why some individuals repeatedly approach the edge of transformation only to retreat into familiar patterns. They are not rejecting success itself. They are avoiding the version of themselves success requires. The good news is that self-sabotage is not a permanent identity. It is a protective habit, and habits can change. Begin by observing moments of unnecessary hesitation. Notice excuses that appear whenever meaningful opportunities arise. Listen carefully to your inner dialogue. Does it whisper, "You're not ready, people like you never succeed," or "This won't last anyway"? Do not argue with those thoughts. Study them. They often reveal old fears rather than present realities. Then ask a different question. What responsibility have I been avoiding by remaining where I am? That question shifts attention from blame to growth. The goal is not merely to receive more. It is to become someone capable of carrying more with wisdom. The old king eventually stopped eating scraps in secret, not because the palace changed, but because he finally accepted the truth of who he had become. His identity slowly caught up with his circumstances. The same invitation quietly waits for each of us. Life often provides opportunities before we feel fully prepared. Growth begins when we allow our character to expand instead of retreating into familiar limitations. The greatest barrier may never be outside you. It may be the invisible story you continue telling yourself. Rewrite that story through small acts of courage, disciplined choices, honest reflection, and faithful responsibility. Because when identity changes, behavior follows. When behavior changes, possibilities expand. And when possibilities expand, the future begins to look remarkably different. Not because reality suddenly obeyed your wishes, but because you finally stopped resisting the life you were becoming. Chapter 6. The Law of Sacrifice. Nothing new enters without something leaving. Every civilization that seriously explored human transformation eventually arrived at the same unsettling conclusion. Nothing truly new enters a life that refuses to release the old. Creation always begins with subtraction. This truth feels uncomfortable because the human mind naturally thinks growth means accumulation. We collect possessions, titles, information, achievements, relationships, routines, and even opinions. We assume that becoming more requires adding more, yet nature quietly teaches a different lesson. Autumn does not apologize for falling leaves. The tree appears to lose part of itself, yet that apparent loss protects its life through winter and prepares it for spring. If the old leaves stubbornly clung to every branch, new growth would struggle to emerge. What appears as death is often intelligent preparation. So it is with human beings. Many people ask for a different life while fiercely protecting the very patterns that created the present one. They ask for peace while refusing to release resentment. They long for healthier relationships while holding tightly to distrust. They seek prosperity while remaining loyal to habits that quietly waste time, attention, and opportunity. They pray for transformation while negotiating with the comfort of familiarity. The ancients recognized this contradiction long ago. There is an old story from an unnamed mystery school about a woman who sought admission into a temple famous for producing wise leaders. She expected secret ceremonies, hidden scrolls, and sacred chants. Instead, the elder placed a heavy backpack upon her shoulders and instructed her to climb a nearby mountain. The climb became increasingly difficult. Each hour she complained that the path was too steep and the summit impossibly distant. When she finally reached the top, exhausted and frustrated, the elder quietly removed the backpack. Only then did she realize it had been filled with ordinary stones. "I carried this weight all day," she said, "yet none of it was necessary." The elder nodded. Exactly. The woman had believed the mountain was her greatest obstacle. In truth, she had been carrying yesterday. How many invisible stones do we carry through life? An old identity that no longer reflects who we are. Old disappointments repeated until they become permanent beliefs. Old excuses that once protected us, but now imprison us. Old definitions of success inherited from society, rather than chosen with wisdom. Old fears disguised as practicality. None of these burdens appear visible, yet each quietly consumes energy needed for the future. Modern psychology offers language for what ancient teachers observed intuitively. The brain naturally favors familiar patterns because familiarity feels safe, even when it is harmful. We often mistake what is familiar for what is true. That is why genuine change can feel strangely uncomfortable. We are not merely changing behavior. We are releasing identities that have quietly organized our lives for years. Transformation asks an unsettling question. What version of yourself are you prepared to leave behind? This is where sacrifice acquires its true meaning. It is not punishment, it is preparation. A sculptor once explained that he never created beauty by adding marble. He revealed beauty by removing everything that concealed it. Every strike of the chisel looked like destruction to the untrained eye. Yet each fragment falling away brought the hidden figure closer to visibility. human transformation follows the same rhythm. Every limiting belief released becomes space for clearer thinking. Every unhealthy attachment surrendered creates room for healthier relationships. Every unnecessary distraction abandoned strengthens attention. Every excuse honestly confronted expands personal freedom. The process often feels like losing something valuable. Only later do we recognize we were releasing what no longer served life. Even prosperity follows this principle. Before greater responsibility arrives, smaller responsibilities must be honored. Before deeper peace emerges, old resentments often demand forgiveness. Before confidence grows, dependence on constant approval usually needs to fade. Nature refuses to overcrowd growth, neither should we. Perhaps this explains why unanswered desires sometimes linger. It is not always because life is withholding blessings. Sometimes life is patiently waiting for us to make room. An overflowing vessel cannot receive fresh water. A crowded calendar rarely welcomes meaningful opportunity. A mind filled with constant noise struggles to recognize quiet wisdom. An identity imprisoned by yesterday rarely notices tomorrow knocking at the door. This ancient law invites courage rather than loss. It asks us to trust that what leaves with integrity creates space for something greater than what was surrendered. The tree trusts spring. The sculptor trusts the hidden form. The traveler trusts that every unnecessary burden left beside the road makes the remaining journey lighter. Perhaps we are invited to do the same. Look honestly at your own life. What habit has outlived its usefulness? What fear continues demanding loyalty? What story about yourself has become too small for the person you are becoming? Release does not diminish you. It prepares you, because sometimes the future is not waiting for you to gain more. It is waiting for you to carry less. Sometimes your unanswered desire is waiting for you to make room. Chapter 7. Epictetus and the Two Worlds You Live. In nearly 2,000 years ago, a philosopher who owned almost nothing possessed something emperors desperately sought but rarely found: an unshakable inner peace. His name was Epictetus. Born into slavery, deprived of comfort, status, and physical freedom, he nevertheless taught one of the most liberating ideas ever recorded. He claimed that every human being lives in two worlds at once. The first world is outside us. It contains the economy, politics, weather, aging, other people's opinions, unexpected illness, missed opportunities, and countless events we cannot fully command. The second world exists within. It is the realm of interpretation, judgment, intention, courage, patience, gratitude, and choice. It is the invisible kingdom from which every response emerges. The tragedy of human life begins when we spend our greatest energy trying to govern the first world while neglecting the second. Epictetus watched powerful men become miserable because they demanded certainty from an uncertain world. They wanted markets to behave predictably, people to always appreciate them, children to never disappoint them, health to remain unchanged, and life to unfold according to carefully constructed plans. Every unexpected event felt like an attack on their happiness. Meanwhile, a man with almost no possessions discovered freedom because he invested his attention elsewhere. He mastered the only kingdom that could truly become his. There is an old Stoic story about a traveler crossing the sea during a violent storm. As waves battered the ship, passengers screamed in panic, each convinced disaster was certain. One elderly sailor quietly tightened the ropes, secured the sails as best he could, and then sat in silence. A frightened young merchant demanded, "Why aren't you terrified?" The sailor smiled gently. "I control the ropes," he replied. "I do not control the sea." Those few words contained centuries of wisdom. Many of us exhaust ourselves attempting to command oceans that were never ours to direct. We replay conversations that ended years ago, hoping memory will somehow rewrite them. We lose sleep over opinions strangers may never express. We worry about futures that exist only as imagination. We become prisoners of possibilities rather than participants in the present. The Stoics did not teach indifference. They taught intelligent responsibility. Do everything that lies within your power. Relish everything that does not. This distinction transforms ordinary life. Imagine a gardener who becomes furious because the rain arrives late. His anger cannot summon clouds. Yet, while resenting the weather, he neglects watering the plants already within his reach. The true loss is not the drought. It is the attention wasted fighting reality instead of responding wisely to it. Life often asks the same question: what is actually yours to do today? You may not control whether people understand your intentions, but you control whether your words are honest. You may not control whether your investments rise or fall, but you control your habits of stewardship and patience. You may not control the passing of years, but you control whether aging becomes bitterness or wisdom. You may not control another person's kindness, but you control whether resentment occupies your own heart. These choices appear small. Together, they create the architecture of a peaceful life. Modern psychology echoes what Epictetus understood through observation alone. Much emotional suffering arises not simply from events themselves, but from our resistance to events. When reality differs from expectation, the mind often wages war against what has already happened. We repeatedly ask, "Why did this happen?" long after the moment has passed, believing that enough worry might somehow reverse time. But worry is rarely preparation. More often, it is imagination wearing the disguise of responsibility. The Stoic path invites another response. Meet reality first, then choose your action. There is quiet strength in accepting what cannot be changed without surrendering your commitment to improve what can. A family caring for an aging parent understands this wisdom. They cannot halt time, but they can choose tenderness over frustration. A retired worker facing unexpected financial uncertainty cannot command the economy, but can cultivate prudence, creativity, and hope instead of despair. Someone grieving profound loss cannot erase sorrow, but can decide whether grief hardens the heart or deepens compassion for others. In every circumstance, two worlds remain present. One belongs to chance, the other belongs to character. The first world constantly changes. The second quietly shapes the meaning of every change. Perhaps that is why the Stoics believed true freedom begins long before circumstances improve. It begins the moment we stop demanding control over what was never ours and begin faithfully cultivating what always has been: our thoughts, our choices, our integrity, our response. When those are governed with wisdom, external uncertainty loses much of its power to disturb the soul. Peace does not wait for perfect conditions. It begins where unnecessary control ends. Chapter 8. The Hermetic Mirror. As within, so without. The Hermetic sages believed that every human being carries an invisible mirror through which the world is interpreted. This understanding later became known through one of the most enduring philosophical principles in history: as within, so without. The phrase has often been misunderstood, as if thoughts alone magically rearrange reality. The ancient teachers intended something deeper, subtler, and far more practical. Your inner world quietly shapes how you perceive reality, the choices you make, the opportunities you recognize, and the actions you consistently repeat. Over time, those patterns influence the life you gradually build. The mirror does not alter the landscape. It alters the way the traveler moves through it. Consider two farmers standing before identical fields after a difficult season. Both experienced drought. Both suffered losses. Yet one sees only proof that effort is useless and abandons the land. The other sees lessons about irrigation, patience, and preparation. Next season, the second farmer plants again with greater wisdom. The field remained the same. The harvest did not. Their inner worlds quietly shaped their outer futures. There is an old Hermetic story about a young apprentice who complained constantly that everyone around him was dishonest, selfish, and impossible to trust. He traveled to an elder seeking secret knowledge that would change his fortune. The elder handed him a tarnished bronze mirror. "Polish this every morning," he instructed. For several weeks, the apprentice faithfully cleaned the mirror until it reflected with perfect clarity. Returning proudly, he asked for the next lesson. The elder smiled. The mirror was never dirty. The apprentice looked confused. "It was your seeing that needed polishing." The young man gradually realized he had approached every relationship expecting betrayal. His suspicion shaped his tone of voice, his body language, and his decisions. Others often responded defensively, confirming the very fears he carried. The world had become a reflection of habits he scarcely recognized. This is the Hermetic mirror at work. Beliefs become expectations. Expectations influence perception. Perception guides decisions. Repeated decisions become habits. Habits quietly construct destiny. Modern psychology describes similar processes through confirmation bias and self-fulfilling expectations. We naturally notice evidence that supports our existing beliefs while overlooking what contradicts them. A person convinced that failure is inevitable often hesitates, delays action, and gives up early, unintentionally increasing the likelihood of the outcome they feared. Someone who believes growth is possible approaches the same challenges with greater persistence, learning, and resilience. The inner story changes the outer behavior. The outer behavior changes future possibilities. This understanding also reveals why emotional patterns deserve careful attention. A heart dominated by resentment often discovers insults everywhere. A mind ruled by fear finds danger in every uncertainty. A spirit grounded in gratitude notices opportunities that others overlook. None of these emotions changes the external world instantly, but each changes the quality of attention brought to that world. Attention influences action. Action shapes results. Results reinforce beliefs. Thus the cycle continues. The Hermetic teachers did not encourage blame. They knew many hardships arise through circumstances beyond personal control. Illness, natural disasters, injustice, and loss are real experiences. Their teaching was never that individuals create every event. Their insight was more empowering. Regardless of what happens, the inner world remains the birthplace of the next response, and every response becomes the beginning of another future. This places remarkable responsibility in our hands. Not responsibility for everything that has happened. Responsibility for how we now participate in what comes next. If bitterness becomes our permanent companion, it will quietly influence every conversation. If hope becomes disciplined rather than naive, it will influence every effort. If integrity becomes a daily practice, it will shape every decision long before anyone notices the results. The mirror never lies. It simply reflects. Therefore, before demanding that life change, the ancient sages encouraged seekers to examine the one place they could always begin: their own consciousness. Polish your thoughts with honesty. Refine your attitudes through gratitude. Strengthen your character through disciplined action. Guard your inner dialogue as carefully as a gardener protects fertile soil. Because whether slowly or swiftly, visibly or invisibly, the life outside you is continually being influenced by the life within you. The mirror is always reflecting. The question is, what are you becoming each time you look into it? Chapter 9. The Tyranny of Control. Why your need to control everything makes you weak. Most people believe control creates security. The ancient philosophers believed the opposite. They observed that the more desperately a person clung to controlling every outcome, every conversation, every relationship, and every future possibility, the more fragile that person became. Their peace depended on circumstances remaining obedient. The moment life refused, fear replaced confidence. Real strength was measured differently. It was revealed not by how much a person controlled, but by how gracefully they remained steady when control disappeared. Marcus Aurelius ruled an empire stretching across continents, yet he began many mornings by reminding himself that he would encounter difficult people, unexpected disappointments, misunderstandings, and events beyond his command. He did not rehearse these possibilities because he expected misery. He did so because he refused to let surprise become suffering. He knew the universe had never signed an agreement promising convenience. There is an old Stoic story about a wealthy merchant whose ships carried precious cargo across dangerous seas. Every evening he climbed a hill overlooking the harbor, straining his eyes toward the horizon. If storms gathered, he slept little. If winds changed direction, anxiety consumed him. His fortune, he believed, depended entirely on forces beyond his reach. One afternoon, an elderly philosopher watched this ritual and asked a simple question: "Can your worrying change the wind?" "No," admitted the merchant. "Can it calm the sea?" "No." "Then what exactly are you controlling?" The merchant had no answer. For years he had mistaken worry for responsibility. How many of us do the same? We replay conversations that cannot be rewritten. We imagine disasters that may never happen. We attempt to predict every possibility so that uncertainty will never surprise us. We monitor other people's opinions as though approval were a form of oxygen. We become exhausted, not because life is impossible, but because we insist upon carrying burdens that belong to no human being. Control quietly becomes another addiction. The irony is profound. The tighter we grip life, the more frightened we become of losing it. Taoist sages observed this long before modern psychology. They compared human life to water flowing around rocks. Water possesses extraordinary power precisely because it does not waste energy resisting every obstacle. It adapts, it yields, it continues moving forward. The rigid tree breaks during the storm. The flexible bamboo survives. Strength and rigidity are not the same. A parent eventually discovers this truth. Children cannot be controlled into wisdom. They must grow through experience, mistakes, and choice. A spouse cannot be controlled into affection. Genuine love cannot be commanded. A leader cannot control every employee's attitude. An investor cannot command the market. A physician cannot guarantee every treatment succeeds. Even the healthiest person cannot negotiate permanently with time. Control always has limits. Influence does not. The Stoics taught one of history's most practical distinctions. Ask one question whenever anxiety appears. Is this within my influence, or only within my imagination? If it belongs to your influence, act with courage. If it belongs beyond your influence, release the illusion that endless worry will somehow become power. This does not mean becoming passive. Quite the opposite. Imagine an experienced gardener. She cannot command sunshine or rainfall, but she prepares the soil, removes weeds, waters faithfully, and plants wisely. She accepts uncertainty without surrendering responsibility. That acceptance allows her energy to flow toward meaningful action instead of helpless frustration. This is mature strength. Modern psychology continues to affirm what these ancient observers discovered through centuries of reflection. People with a healthy sense of agency focus on what they can meaningfully affect. Those overwhelmed by anxiety often overestimate their responsibility for events they cannot control, while underestimating the influence they actually possess. They become trapped between helplessness and perfectionism. Ancient wisdom offers another path. Relish perfection, practice presence. Perhaps the greatest misunderstanding about surrender is that it sounds like defeat. The Stoics never taught surrender of effort. They taught surrender of illusion. Continue planting, continue serving, continue preparing, continue loving, continue acting with integrity. Simply stop demanding guarantees before you move. Life has never promised certainty. It continually offers opportunity. Every unexpected hardship becomes an invitation to discover whether your peace depends upon circumstances or upon character. The person who remains calm while everything goes according to plan has learned very little. The person who remains steady when plans collapse has discovered inner freedom. That freedom cannot be purchased. It cannot be inherited. It can only be cultivated every day, every decision, every response. Because genuine power has never belonged to the person who controls every storm. It belongs to the one who learns to navigate through them. Chapter 10. The False Sign. When you mistake coincidence for destiny, imagine waking before dawn and noticing the same number on the clock 3 mornings in a row. Later that day, a stranger speaks a sentence that seems strangely connected to a question you've been carrying for months. By evening, you begin to wonder whether invisible forces are sending you instructions. Human beings have always searched for patterns. Long before telescopes mapped the heavens or psychology explored the hidden workings of the mind, ancient civilizations watched birds, stars, rivers, and dreams, believing that reality whispered through symbols. They were not foolish. They understood something profound about human consciousness. Meaning often hides inside ordinary moments. But the wisest among them also offered an important warning. Not every pattern is a command. There is an old story from ancient Greece about a young traveler who desperately wanted certainty before beginning an important journey. At every crossroads he searched for omens. If a bird flew east, he continued. If it flew west, he delayed. If clouds gathered, he abandoned his plans. If the wind shifted, he changed direction again. Months passed, then years. Eventually, an old philosopher asked him, "How far have your signs taken you?" The traveler lowered his head. He had mistaken endless interpretation for meaningful action. His search for certainty had quietly become another excuse for remaining still. This danger has never disappeared. It has merely changed its appearance. Today, people may search for repeated numbers, mysterious coincidences, perfectly timed encounters, or unexpected events, believing every unusual experience carries a hidden command. Sometimes these moments genuinely awaken curiosity or inspire reflection. They may encourage gratitude, courage, or deeper awareness. Yet ancient wisdom repeatedly urged discernment. Wonder should awaken thought. It should never replace it. The Stoics believed that reason was one of humanity's greatest gifts. They encouraged people to observe life carefully, without becoming enslaved by imagination. Marcus Aurelius admired the beauty and mystery of existence, yet he continually returned to one question: what action is right in this moment? Notice the difference. He did not ask, "What hidden message guarantees my future?" He asked, "What is the wisest response available to me now?" That question transforms curiosity into responsibility. The Hermetic philosophers loved symbols. They saw nature as a mirror reflecting deeper principles. A seed revealed growth. Flowing water illustrated adaptation. Sunrise represented renewal. But these symbols were invitations to contemplate universal truths, not shortcuts around disciplined judgment. The symbol pointed toward wisdom. It did not replace wisdom. Modern psychology offers another fascinating perspective. Human beings possess an extraordinary ability called pattern recognition. It helped our ancestors survive by recognizing seasonal changes, dangerous animals, and familiar faces. Yet this remarkable ability also encourages us to connect unrelated events, simply because our minds naturally search for order. Sometimes the pattern is genuine. Sometimes the connection exists only because the mind longs for certainty. This does not diminish life's mystery. It deepens our humility. There is another ancient story from Egypt about an apprentice scribe who found a feather floating beside a temple entrance. Believing it to be a divine instruction, he abandoned years of study to chase imagined prophecies across distant lands. Decades later, he returned to the temple, weary and disappointed. The old teacher smiled gently. "The feather was never telling you where to go," he said. "It was reminding you to become light enough to learn." The sign had meaning, just not the meaning the apprentice assumed. How many opportunities do we overlook because we become obsessed with decoding extraordinary messages instead of responding faithfully to ordinary responsibilities? The parent searching endlessly for cosmic confirmation while neglecting today's conversation with a child. The entrepreneur waiting for one final sign before beginning the work already prepared. The retiree postponing meaningful service because certainty has not yet arrived. The student collecting symbols instead of developing skill. The irony is striking. Life often answers sincere questions through experience rather than explanation. A chance meeting may encourage you to think differently. A repeated number may remind you to pause. A beautiful sunrise may awaken gratitude. An unexpected conversation may reveal forgotten possibilities. To sync these moments with appreciation, reflect upon them, journal about them, ask what they reveal about your current state of mind, but never surrender your judgment to them. The greatest guides throughout history balanced wonder with wisdom. They remained open without becoming gullible, curious without becoming superstitious, hopeful without abandoning reason. because discernment is itself a form of spiritual maturity. The universe, nature, or life, however one chooses to describe the great mystery, does not require us to abandon intelligence in order to experience awe. In fact, genuine wisdom allows both to coexist. Stand in wonder, question deeply, observe carefully, act responsibly. Allow mystery to enlarge your heart without shrinking your discernment. For signs are often invitations to become more conscious. They are rarely substitutes for character. The wisest life is not built upon chasing extraordinary signals. It is built upon extraordinary faithfulness to ordinary truth. Every day offers enough guidance for those willing to see clearly, not with superstition, but with awakened perception. Wonder without surrendering reason. Chapter 11. The Death of the Old Self. Why transformation feels like losing yourself. There comes a season in every meaningful life when the greatest loss is not a person, a career, or a possession. It is the person you can no longer continue pretending to be. Few experiences are more unsettling. From the outside, everything may appear unchanged. You still wake in the same home. You speak with the same people. You walk the same streets. Yet something deep within has begun to loosen its grip on an identity that once seemed permanent. What once defined you no longer fits. The applause that once motivated you grows strangely quiet. The habits you defended begin to feel like chains. The fears that governed your choices slowly lose their authority. This is not failure. It is initiation. Ancient mystery schools understood this long before modern psychology described identity transformation. Before students received deeper teachings, they passed through symbolic ceremonies representing death. Not physical death, but the ending of an old way of seeing themselves. The purpose was profound. No one can receive a larger life while clinging to a smaller identity. There is an ancient story of a sculptor whose apprentices admired a massive block of marble. They asked how he planned to create such a magnificent statue. The old master replied, "The statue already exists." Confused, they looked at the unshaped stone. "I simply remove everything that does not belong." Day after day, he chipped away pieces of marble. To the untrained eye, it appeared as though he were destroying something valuable. In truth, he was revealing what had always been hidden. Transformation often feels exactly the same. It appears to the old self as loss. It appears to the deeper self as liberation. Psychologists speak of identity as the collection of stories we repeatedly tell ourselves. I am the responsible one. I am the successful one. I am the victim. I am the strong one. I am too old to begin again. These narratives become so familiar that we mistake them for reality itself. Eventually, life asks a difficult question. Who are you without the story? Retirement often introduces this challenge. Someone who has spent 40 years identifying entirely with a profession suddenly discovers that the title has disappeared, but consciousness remains. Parents experience it when children build lives of their own. Caregivers face it after years devoted to others. Even success can create this crisis when a lifelong goal is finally achieved, and the old identity no longer has a mountain left to climb. The greatest uncertainty is rarely external. It is internal. Who am I becoming now? The answer cannot emerge while the old identity demands to remain in control. This explains why growth frequently feels lonely. Some relationships were built upon the version of you that sought constant approval. As you become more authentic, those relationships may shift. Others who benefited from your fear of disappointing them may resist your new boundaries. Familiar conversations lose their appeal. Old ambitions begin to seem strangely small. For a time, you may wonder whether you are losing yourself. You are. The self constructed from fear, comparison, and unconscious habit is slowly dissolving, and that can be frightening. A caterpillar, if capable of thought, might mistake the dissolving of its familiar body for catastrophe. It cannot imagine wings while still crawling along leaves. Yet hidden within that seeming destruction is a completely different possibility. Nature repeatedly demonstrates this principle. Seeds split before they grow. Autumn leaves fall before spring returns. Night always precedes dawn. Ancient philosophy never promised transformation without discomfort. It promised that discomfort could become meaningful. The Stoics encouraged voluntary change before forced change arrived. Buddhist philosophy speaks of releasing attachment to fixed identity. Taoist wisdom reminds us that resistance to natural transformation creates unnecessary suffering. Hermetic teachings describe inner refinement before outer expression. Each tradition, in its own language, points toward the same truth. The person you are becoming requires the person you have been to loosen their grip. This process cannot be rushed, nor should it be feared. Meet it with curiosity. Allow yourself to grieve the familiar without returning to it. Honor what your previous identity helped you survive, then thank it and gently let it go. One day you will look back and realize that what once felt like the collapse of your life was actually the collapse of your limitations. The old self was never your enemy. It was simply a temporary home, a necessary chapter, not the entire story. Every meaningful transformation asks for courage before clarity, but those who continue walking discover something remarkable. They did not lose themselves. They uncovered someone who had been waiting patiently beneath years of fear, expectation, and performance. The truest version of you was never created. It was revealed. Just as the sculptor knew from the beginning, the masterpiece was already there. It simply required everything unnecessary to fall away. Growth often feels like loss first. Chapter 12, The Golden Rule, the Law of Return. What you consistently give eventually shapes what returns to you. The ancients described this in many ways. Some called it the law of sowing and reaping. Others spoke of reciprocity, honor, reputation, or simply the natural order of human relationships. Though their languages differed, they pointed toward the same enduring truth. Life often mirrors the quality of what we continually cultivate. This is not a promise that every kind act will immediately be rewarded, or that every dishonest person will instantly suffer consequences. History itself proves otherwise. Good people sometimes endure hardship. Dishonest people sometimes prosper for a season. Yet the ancient philosophers rarely measured life by seasons. They measured it by decades. A farmer does not judge the harvest the day after planting. He understands that seeds disappear into darkness long before they rise into sunlight. Likewise, the habits of generosity, honesty, patience, and compassion often work quietly beneath the surface before their influence becomes visible. The Stoics believed that virtue was its own reward because it shaped the person practicing it. Marcus Aurelius reminded himself that every action strengthened a habit of character. Whether praised or criticized, each decision quietly determined the kind of human being he was becoming. That insight changes everything. Generosity first transforms the giver. Integrity first strengthens the one who practices it. Compassion first softens the heart that offers it. The return begins within long before it appears without. There is an old story from ancient China about a village elder known for settling disputes. People traveled great distances seeking his judgment because they trusted his fairness. One day, a young official asked him how he had earned such extraordinary respect. The elder replied, "I never tried to collect respect. I collected truthful moments. I kept my promises when nobody was watching. I spoke carefully when anger tempted me. I treated strangers as tomorrow's neighbors. After many years, trust simply grew where I had planted it." The young official expected a secret technique. Instead, he found a lifetime of ordinary faithfulness. Modern life often encourages a different approach. We search for influence before earning credibility. We seek recognition before developing substance. We desire extraordinary results while overlooking ordinary consistency. Ancient wisdom reverses the order. Become trustworthy before seeking trust. Become generous before seeking abundance. Become dependable before seeking opportunity. The harvest follows the planting. This principle extends far beyond money or reputation. Think of a marriage strengthened by thousands of small acts of patience, a friendship preserved because someone consistently listened rather than merely spoke, a family healed because one person chose forgiveness instead of revenge, a teacher remembered decades later because of quiet encouragement offered to uncertain students. None of these returns appeared overnight. They accumulated like rivers carving valleys. Small actions repeated faithfully possess astonishing power. This also explains why resentment, dishonesty, selfishness, and manipulation eventually isolate the people who practice them. They may achieve temporary victories, but every repeated action trains both the individual and the community surrounding them. Character compounds, so does its absence. The Hermetic philosophers described life as correspondence, inner patterns expressing themselves outwardly over time. When integrity becomes an inner habit, it naturally influences speech, decisions, relationships, and opportunities. People begin to experience you differently because you consistently show up differently. This is not magic. It is the quiet mathematics of trust. Consider the elderly woman who spends years volunteering in her community without seeking recognition. When illness eventually visits her home, dozens of people appear with meals, encouragement, and practical help. Did kindness guarantee comfort? No. But kindness cultivated relationships capable of carrying hardship together. The law of return often arrives through people. Influence itself follows this same pattern. Many imagine influence belongs to the loudest voice, the wealthiest person, or the highest title. History repeatedly tells another story. The individuals remembered longest are often those whose integrity quietly shaped generations. Confucius influenced civilizations not through armies, but through wisdom. Epictetus owned little, yet his teachings still guide millions centuries after his death. Their greatest inheritance was not possessions. It was character shared freely. Perhaps that is why every ancient tradition eventually arrives at a remarkably similar conclusion. Treat others with the same dignity you hope to receive, not because life always responds immediately, but because every generous act shapes the world you will someday inhabit. Every conversation plants a seed. Every promise strengthens or weakens trust. Every compassionate choice quietly alters the atmosphere surrounding your life. You are always sowing something. Choose your seeds carefully. Because the harvest often arrives long after the planting is forgotten. And when it does, it usually resembles what has been growing inside you all along. Chapter 13. The quiet power of alignment. There is a peculiar exhaustion that has nothing to do with age. It is the fatigue of living divided against yourself. You say health matters, yet neglect your body. You claim relationships come first, yet rarely make time for the people you love. You speak about peace while feeding your mind endless anxiety. You hope for integrity while making small compromises that slowly reshape your character. Eventually, the conflict becomes invisible because it has become familiar. Ancient philosophers understood that the deepest struggles often begin long before any visible crisis appears. They begin the moment a person's beliefs, words, habits, and actions stop walking in the same direction. This quiet division has many names: inner contradiction, fragmentation, disharmony. The ancients simply called it living out of alignment. There is an old story from the Taoist tradition about a master maker whose work was admired throughout the kingdom. His bows never splintered, never bent unevenly, and rarely failed even after years of use. When asked about his remarkable skill, he surprised everyone. "I do not begin with the wood," he said. "I begin with myself. If my thoughts are restless, my hands become restless. If my breathing is hurried, the bow remembers my haste. So each morning I first become straight within. Only then do I shape what is outside." His apprentices expected better tools. Instead, they discovered better alignment. The same principle quietly governs every human life. When beliefs remain disconnected from behavior, energy is constantly spent maintaining the gap between who we pretend to be and who we actually are. The Stoics recognized this as one of the greatest obstacles to peace. Marcus Aurelius repeatedly reminded himself that philosophy was not something to admire, but something to practice. Wisdom without action eventually becomes another form of self-deception. Knowledge alone changes very little. Embodied truth changes everything. Imagine a compass whose needle points north, while the traveler insists on walking south. The compass is not broken. The traveler is simply ignoring it. Conscience often works the same way. Most people already know the conversations they need to have, the habits they need to release, the forgiveness they need to offer, and the disciplines they need to embrace. The difficulty is rarely a lack of information. It is a lack of alignment. Ancient Egyptian teachings often compared a balanced life to the feather of Ma'at, symbolizing truth, harmony, and order. A worthy life was not measured merely by achievements, but by the harmony between one's inner principles and outward conduct. Order within created order without, not perfect circumstances, but coherent living. Modern psychology supports this ancient insight. Persistent inner conflict consumes emotional energy. When our values and behaviors continually oppose one another, stress quietly accumulates. We become mentally exhausted, not because life demands too much, but because we are constantly negotiating with ourselves. Allen's simplifies. Not because life becomes easier, because unnecessary resistance disappears. Think about a musician tuning an instrument before a performance. If one string remains out of tune, the entire melody suffers. The solution is not to play louder, it is to restore harmony. Human life works similarly. Integrity is not perfection, it is consistency of direction. The retiree who finally begins spending time with grandchildren after years of postponement. The business owner who chooses honesty over immediate profit. the friend who apologizes instead of protecting pride, the caregiver who honors both compassion and healthy boundaries. Each small decision reduces inner contradiction. Each decision brings life into greater coherence. The Hermetic philosophers taught that inner order naturally expresses itself outwardly through repeated action. Taoist sages described effortless action arising from harmony rather than force. Stoics encouraged agreement between reason and behavior. Though separated by continents and centuries, they pointed toward the same profound realization. Peace is not something we chase. It is something that appears when we stop living divided. This does not mean every circumstance suddenly becomes pleasant. Illness still visits, loss still arrives, unexpected disappointments continue to appear. But the person living in alignment meets these realities with far greater strength because they are no longer fighting themselves. Their values guide their decisions, their words reflect their convictions, their habits support their purpose, their actions reinforce their identity. They become internally whole, and something remarkable happens. The constant need to impress others begins to fade. Comparison loses its grip, fear of judgment weakens, decisions become clearer, not because uncertainty disappears, because integrity becomes a dependable guide. Life still contains mystery, but the path beneath your feet grows steadier. Perhaps that is the quiet secret the ancients preserved through generations. Power does not always arrive with noise. Sometimes it arrives through 1,000 ordinary decisions made consistently enough that eventually your entire life begins moving in one direction, without inner contradiction, without constant pretending, without exhausting conflict. Alignment does not remove every obstacle. It removes the unnecessary struggle created when your heart, mind, and actions refuse to walk together. And once they do, life begins to feel less like a battle against yourself and more like a faithful expression of who you were becoming all along. Chapter 14. The Divine Laws. Becoming the person your future requires. Life responds over time to what you consistently become. The transformation is rarely dramatic in the beginning. It unfolds so gradually that many mistake it for coincidence. A single conversation changes a friendship. One disciplined morning changes a habit. A small act of integrity opens an unexpected opportunity months later. One decision to forgive lifts a burden carried for decades. Nothing appears miraculous, yet everything changes. There is an old story about an aging gardener employed by a king. Every spring he planted fruit trees whose harvest he knew he would never personally enjoy. A young prince laughed at him. "Why labor for fruit you will never eat?" The old gardener continued digging before answering. "I have eaten from trees planted by people I never met. Now it is my turn." The prince remained silent. Years later, after becoming king himself, he ordered orchards planted throughout the kingdom. Travelers found shade beneath them. Children climbed their branches. Families gathered their fruit. The old gardener had not merely planted trees. He had planted vision. That is how the divine law quietly works. The law of sowing and reaping is not simply about material success. It is about understanding that every repeated thought, every consistent habit, every generous act, every disciplined choice becomes a seed placed into the invisible soil of tomorrow. Some seeds become forests, others become weeds. Both grow patiently. Modern culture often asks, "How can I change my circumstances?" Ancient wisdom first asks, "Who are you becoming while waiting for them to change?" The difference is profound. Victims believe life happens only to them. Students begin asking what life is teaching them. Stewards faithfully care for what has already been entrusted to them. Builders patiently create what does not yet exist. Wise creators recognize that lasting influence begins long before visible success appears. Each stage represents a deeper relationship with responsibility. The victim searches for someone to blame. The student searches for understanding. The steward searches for opportunities to serve faithfully. The builder searches for meaningful action. The wise creator quietly becomes the kind of person whose presence improves every environment they enter. Notice that none of these stages require extraordinary talent. They require extraordinary consistency. The Stoics understood this deeply. Epictetus reminded his students that while they could never command the weather, the opinions of others, or the timing of fortune, they could always govern their own judgments, choices, and character. That inner responsibility became the foundation of genuine freedom. Freedom, then, was never the absence of difficulty. It was the presence of disciplined character. The Hermetic philosophers offered another perspective through the principle, often summarized as within, so without. Properly understood, this is not an invitation to magical thinking. It is a reminder that your inner world influences how you perceive opportunities, interpret setbacks, relate to people, and persist through adversity. A hopeful mind notices possibilities that fear overlooks. A disciplined character follows through where impulse gives up. The outer life gradually reflects the patterns repeatedly practiced within. Taoist sages added yet another dimension. They observed that rivers reach the sea not by force, but through steady alignment with their nature. Water does not struggle to become powerful. It simply continues flowing around obstacles until even stone begins to yield. Perhaps wisdom resembles water more than lightning. Quiet, pest, potet. The principle of stewardship completes the picture. Ancient caretakers knew that greater responsibility rarely arrives before smaller responsibilities have been honored. A person who wastes time imagines more time will solve the problem. One who neglects today's relationships expects future relationships to feel different. Someone who mismanages a little wealth dreams that greater wealth will somehow produce wisdom. But character expands before capacity safely can. The greatest opportunities rarely arrive to transform a person. They reveal the person already formed. Then comes perhaps the most beautiful of all ancient principles, the Golden Rule. Every civilization discovered, in one form or another, that what we consistently extend toward others eventually shapes the world we inhabit. Respect creates trust. Compassion builds community. Integrity strengthens influence. Service multiplies meaning. The return is not always immediate, but it is rarely absent. Cause and effect quietly governs more of life than we often admit. Not every outcome lies within our control, but every choice becomes one of the countless causes contributing to tomorrow's possibilities. This realization changes how we pray, hope, dream, and work. Instead of asking only for better circumstances, we begin asking better questions. What habits deserve planting today? What fears deserve releasing? What responsibilities deserve greater faithfulness? What kind of person would naturally flourish within the future I desire? These questions possess astonishing power because they shift attention away from demanding immediate results and toward cultivating lasting foundations. The ancients never promised that reality would instantly obey every wish. They offered something both more demanding and more liberating. Become the person capable of recognizing, creating, and sustaining the opportunities that gradually appear before you. The harvest always begins beneath the soil, long before anyone applauds, long before visible success, long before the world notices anything has changed. Everything important is already growing. At the beginning of this journey, a mystery stood before us. Why do some lives seem to flourish while others remain trapped in cycles of frustration? Despite equal desire, intelligence, or effort, many assume unseen forces are withholding their future. Others blame luck, timing, society, or fate. The ancient teachers invited a different possibility. Perhaps nothing was ever blocking the future. Perhaps life was quietly waiting for different seeds. This simple thought transforms everything. Imagine walking through a vast orchard at the end of summer. Every tree bears fruit according to what was planted years before. No tree argues with another. No branch envies the harvest beside it. Each simply reveals the invisible choice made long ago. Human life often unfolds the same way. Today's conversations become tomorrow's relationships. Today's disciplines become tomorrow's character. Today's attention becomes tomorrow's direction. Today's integrity becomes tomorrow's influence. Every unseen seed eventually seeks the sunlight. That is why the ancients placed such extraordinary emphasis on ordinary moments. Every conversation plants one. Every habit plants one. Every courageous decision plants one. Every generous act plants one. Every promise kept plants one. Every fear confronted plants one. Even silence plants something. So does neglect. No day is empty. Every day is planting season. Perhaps that realization is the true divine law, not that life instantly grants every desire, but that life faithfully grows what we consistently cultivate. This perspective replaces anxiety with responsibility. Instead of asking, "Why hasn't my future arrived?" we begin asking, "What am I planting today?" The question changes the person, and changed people gradually change their lives. Consider the elderly craftsman whose masterpiece was never built in a single afternoon. Each careful cut seemed insignificant by itself, yet thousands of patient decisions eventually became something beautiful enough to outlive its maker. Character is built the same way. Wisdom is built the same way. Peace is built the same way. No single act transforms a life, but countless faithful acts inevitably do. There will still be seasons when nothing appears to grow. Every farmer knows this. The field often looks unchanged long after seeds have disappeared beneath the earth. Yet beneath the surface, invisible work continues. Roots spread. Life gathers strength. Preparation continues in silence. Many people abandon their deepest values simply because they mistake invisible progress for no progress. The ancients warned against this mistake. Remain faithful to the planting. Trust the quiet work. Allow time to become your ally instead of your enemy. Perhaps the greatest miracle is not sudden transformation. Perhaps it is becoming, almost without noticing, someone who now responds differently to life. Calmer where you once panicked, kinder where you once judged, braver where you once hesitated, more patient where you once demanded certainty. These are the harvests that cannot be purchased. They can only be cultivated. And once they appear, they quietly influence every other part of life. The world may still remain unpredictable. Loss will still visit. Unexpected changes will still arrive. But the person who has cultivated wisdom meets these seasons differently than the person who has cultivated fear. The same storm falls upon both. Only one has learned how to grow through it. Perhaps that is why the greatest philosophers